I want to welcome each of you here to the Georgetown City Council meeting for Monday, November the 11th, 2024. A reminder that please, when you're here, remind you of the code of conduct that we expect for you all to follow as we do this. And we'll go through the agenda as written, and we'll start from there. At this time, let's see, Madam Clerk, if you have a roll call, please.
Mr. Allen?
Here.
Here.
Mrs. Conway? Mrs. Stanford?
Present.
Mr. Hampton?
Here.
Mr. Showalter?
Here.
Mr. Stone?
Here.
Mrs. Tackett?
Here.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion, Mayor.
Motion made by Mr. Allen,
Second, Mayor.
second made by Ms. Tackett. Are there further questions and or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the motion passed. If you have received the check receipts of the check register, please raise your hand, council. Let the record reflect that all have received. At this time, public comments. A reminder, public comments, you will have 4 minutes to state your business before this council. Madam Clerk will give you the time, and when you get close to that time, within 3 minutes, she will let you know that 1 minute is left. And then at the end of that 1 minute, she will let you know that your 4-minute time limit is up. We will ask for you to be respectful, and that at that time that you stop and take your seat, so we can allow others who want to speak their opportunity. At this time, we have Mr. Dan Holman about land investment.
Dan Holman from Georgetown. So we have all been talking about like the Wiles land and economic development all year long. So I guess just there's questions now that the regional project is not going forward at this time. Well, what are the next steps for economic development in town? And then also, we still have this option to buy contract on the Wiles land. So how to close that out? Do we just? So I just want to make sure you all know it appears that the fiscal court, that's in their name, the contract option, but kind of in partnership with the city all along. It looks like they had an executive session on Friday for 45 minutes where it appears that's what they talked about is this contract option that's expiring at the end of the year and what to do about it. And then they also have a special called meeting tomorrow night that it also appears is about this contract option on the Wiles farm, this 500 acres. And I hope at this point we all know, just what a kind of a valuable land this is. It really is a very versatile, valuable land for the future of Georgetown. And we have an option to buy it or to take control of it. And so I think, so the city council, hopefully, you all will be able to have some stake in that conversation. It's not officially on the agenda, but hopefully, there will be some way before tomorrow's meeting with the fiscal court. So I guess one theory perspective is, well, the option is in the fiscal court's name, so we'll just let them do whatever they do, which is kind of abdicating. I think hopefully you all have a responsibility to kind of have some thought, or publicly express some thought about what to do about this, or to ask some questions about next steps of economic development. So, it sounds expensive to people. It's $9 million. And then we say, well, how do we, have $4.5 million for the city and the county? That just sounds like a lot of money. But the way investments work, you're just basically moving around. And this is something that, if we were asked, if you requested to formally have this put on paper, just, you could consider it. You're just moving your balance sheet around. You're taking on an asset, and Greg and Alonzo and you all know this. You take on an asset, you acquire debt. So on one side of the balance sheet, you just got a big new asset of this valuable land, and on the other side, you have debt, and it just balances out. I feel you all could acquire this land, and then, financially you could do it, and financially you should ask the question to see on paper just what would it look like, would it even affect the financial health of the city to do it? And the reason to do it is that you would have control over whatever happens there next. You just have control. There's all kinds of possibilities that people have talked about all throughout this of what could be done there. You might, the city surely would be interested in keeping some of the land or doing something with the land inside the bypass of that 114 acres. think. So, for example, Goodwill recently purchased over by Ashton Grove, across from Kroger, a 2-acre lot, I think it was, for $2 million. So, that was flipped. Someone bought it for $1 million and sold it like a few months later for $2 million. So $2 million for this little, I would frankly call that like a sad little plot of land, but a little triangular, odd-shaped thing for $2 million right over there on the bypass. So in the future, this land on the bypass where Wiles Farm is, like if 10 years from now that's going for like, if people are paying commercial rates of $1 million an acre, the city would be kind of wondering, why did we not buy it now? And, you're real, so that's just to consider. I hope you all can consider this, and you're not going to even lose money on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any others? At this time, I have a couple of merit comments and to kind of talk a bit about to what Mr. Holman was referring to. And I cannot speak for the fiscal court. Yes, the fiscal court does hold the option on that property. And yes, they are going to have a special meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock in this room here to discuss it. And from that, at that point in time, I guess we'll know what they're going to do from that point on. So we'll just keep in tune with what has transpired with that, and we'll let the council know from that. Okay. Next.
It's not good. Express the thought
Hey,
to the court.
hey,
That was my
hey,
comment, sir.
Mr. Holman.
I understand.
Mr. Holman, you forgot what I just said earlier.
Right.
I said that this is a court of business, and we expect you, like anybody else, to adhere to that. If you can't do that, we're going to ask you to leave.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda here, we're talking about Mayor's comment is as follows. On November the 23rd at 12 noon, the Kentucky Historical Society, we're going to have a historical marker dedication at the old Georgetown Cemetery. This is something they've been working on for the past couple of years, and what this is to give a little history. A couple of years ago, they petitioned that cemetery was an actual historical graveyard and a pioneer graveyard, and so a group of individuals contacted the Kentucky Historical Society. They came and did a study on this, and they agreed that it was. So on November 23rd, they're going to have a dedication. They have 2 markers which they're going to put up, and they have an unveiling at 12 noon. So if you want to come by for that, that would be a good for everybody to attend. That'll be again November the 23rd at 12 noon, and it'll be at the old Georgetown Cemetery.
And no Georgetown Cemetery is over on
Off of North Hamilton.
North Hamilton.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Next, the Main Street paving. As you all know, just a little bit of history of that. We going to have to bring to council a little bit later on as to the fact that we're going to actually end up have to either pave that road ourselves, because that is a state road, but we're going to either pave that road ourselves. And I'm not, is Eddie here? Just correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie, the amount is about $30,000 to do that?
Yes, sir.
And that will be for the paving. And that will be from Galvin's across to Elizabeth.
Yeah, to the water filtration.
Water filtration, thank you again. And what they'll do is, they will also make sure that it's paved correctly and also put the crosswalks back in. So that's something we're gonna give you an update on that later. Okay? Next, executive.
Mayor, I move to go into closed session pursuant to KRS 61.8101B for deliberations on the prospect acquisition of real property for public use in connection with the Lexus Way Old Oxford Road Extension Project. The purpose of the closed session is to discuss a counteroffer from a property owner related to the possible purchase of privately owned property, the public discussion of which would be likely to affect the value of the subject property.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second made by Ms. Hambrick. Are there any questions or comments? At this time, we go into executive session. Council, we'll go to the room, across to the conference room.
Okay.
You turn off your mics, everything.
Yeah, so is that, you all, did you cover the fiscal policy? So they were, like, did they, yeah, what did they talk about? You all have-
Well, they went to executive session, but you can do that for the same.
Yeah.
Didn't say,
They,
they
yeah,
didn't take any action.
like today, he said, you know, going to executive session, just Alexis way.
They don't have to be as specific.
Yeah,
That's more usually.
it'd be nice. But it could
They're
be
not
more-
required
a little
by
bit
law
more
to be,
open, right.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think,
And, well, it wasn't executive session today anyway, so.
yeah.
I'm just, I'm gonna figure out that copy.
Oh, you had that guy that before.
Oh, usually a copy stays.
Yeah.
Good, how are you?
Trying to get
My
my
brother's in town.
make sure I took my garbage out.
Have a good evening.
I guess I know.
How big is he?
Oh, I'm just gonna get some garbage bags.
I've got some small ones that work for the office.
I had some food waste and they're like, don't leave it in here.
Oh, no, yeah. Mice. I've got some little bags of work, I'll take it. I mean, they're too small for packages. They've been in there for years.
Cause all I do is find their building is like the 30-gallon kitchen.
I'll bring some. I got some.
I was gonna steal some from there.
I was in, if they're in that little back room in my office, I
I was informed I better, I just bring garbage, I should take it outside.
oh, yeah, get it out. The mice and the raccoons.
Yeah.
might back up.
Mayor, I make a motion that we move to return to open session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second made by Mr. Allen. Are there any further questions and or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. I want to report that there was no action taken during the executive session. Okay, now we're going to go to committee reports. Mr. Allen, are you all going to, or Mr. Hampton, Finance?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Finance Committee met on October 24th, 2024. Everyone was in attendance, including the mayor, council member Allen, myself, CAO Golden, City Attorney Veteran, Finance Director Clark, as well as representatives from Baird. We approved the minutes from the October 7th meeting. We discussed the City Hall renovation project, specifically the finance discussion with Baird, which will appear on tonight, talk about bond scheduling and timing and potential bonding amounts. We also discussed the fund balance reserve policy, that's been brought before council, benchmark against other cities. We recommended the minimum 30% and was reviewed with full council. Investment discussion, we talked about Stockyards Bank CD of $730,144.89. It's maturing on November 12th, tomorrow, and reinvest for 5 months at 4.75 annual percentage rate. And then review that with full council, and after that, we adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Next, we have the first reading of the work session ordinance. Sponsors are Alonzo Allen and Sandra Wilkins Grant. I'll turn it over to Mr. Allen, since he want to discuss anything on this.
And,
Okay.
nothing. Just read.
An ordinance amending chapter 2, article 2 of the Georgetown Code of Ordinances establishing regular council work session. Summary. 1. Amends chapter 2, article 2 of the Code of Ordinances to establish a schedule of regular work sessions and meetings of the Georgetown City Council. 2. Provides for repeal of inconsistent ordinances, severability of provisions, and effective date upon passage of publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 629 North Broadway, Georgetown, Kentucky 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced and publicly read the first time November 11, 2024.
All right. Item number 9, and I'm going to ask Chase to come on up for Georgetown Municipal Water Sewer Service. You have an informational update.
Okay, I think we should have a PowerPoint tonight. There you go. Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, I don't have any bills to pay. But because I love talking about water, as you all know, I can't give you the night off. And in all seriousness, since most of the time I'm here at this podium with you, we're talking about those payables, those pay items. But I thought it was important to take this opportunity tonight to give you an update on some very important issues pertaining to our drinking water. Last 6 years, 6+ years, all of our discussions have been heavy on the sanitary sewer side, talking about 2 landmark projects, wastewater treatment plant number 1, upgrade and expansion, and our south sewer extension. Tonight I want to turn to the other side of our business, and I want to talk about drinking water. So next slide, please. 2 topics of discussion. First is related to new drinking water regulations that have been implemented by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, so coming from the federal level down to Georgetown Municipal. And then kind of more specifically, the first item is it's an overview on what these new regulations will involve. And I want to talk to you about how Georgetown Municipal will meet meet compliance with the new regulations, and talk about what it means for the future of Georgetown Municipal and our customers. Second thing is, I've given you a little bit of information over the last few months, but it's about our ongoing, or it's complete, but the lead and copper rule and our inventory that we've done over our system. So that's kind of the agenda. Any questions there as we jump into this? Starting at 30,000 feet, and we'll work our way down into the weeds, into the details. Next slide, please. So I would wager to guess that most people here, most of our customers, at least a good bit, have heard one of these two terms being forever chemicals or PFAS or PFOA. They're scary terms. They have negative connotations. There's no debating that. And I'd also guess that maybe you've even read a news article or two about these terms. Terms can be scary if not discussed in the right context. So that's what I wanted to do with this, is really dive into what these new regulations dealing with forever chemicals means for our customers. So EPA, going back, they've implemented new rules for drinking water utilities that are targeting reducing the concentrations of these compounds in our drinking water. This is not just a Georgetown municipal effort. This is a nationwide effort. Every utility, both public and private, so Georgetown Municipal, just like Kentucky American Water Company, subject to these new regulations. And we as an industry, with the regulators, we comment on these, we have input on these. We have set this goal through these new regulations to reduce the concentration of these compounds in our drinking water. Questions there? Okay. Yeah, next slide's fine. So what are PFAS? And I'm not going to try to pronounce or say the chemical compound name. I'm just going to refer it to as PFAS as what we want to explain tonight. They're man-made chemicals. They're manufactured chemical compounds developed for their water and heat resistance properties. They're been in production since about the 1940s. And these compounds have been studied in recent years because we're starting to see an accumulation of these compounds in the environment: water, soil, air. So I want to stop there, and I'm going to say this as clearly as possible. I'm even going to look at Peter when I say it. Georgetown Municipal does not produce these chemicals. We are not the manufacturer of these chemicals. We do not add these chemicals to our water as part of the treatment process. Can't make that any more clear. That is one of the things that is misunderstood about this discussion. But these are compounds that have accumulated in the water. They're not done by utilities that are trying to treat the water. Next slide, please. So what are the compounds used for? Where are they found? Why are they produced? Compounds are found in a number of products that we all use on a daily basis. They're found in food packaging, whether it's something that you get your burger wrapped in at a fast food place, whether it's something that you buy something in at your local grocery store. They're in waterproofing compounds that we use in our carpet and our clothing. For me, probably my biggest exposure to these compounds is my nonstick cookware, my pots and pans that I use every night to make dinner for myself, my family. They're also found in a number of flame retarding materials that our fire departments use. These compounds are they're key to fire extinguishers. What that composition of that material is inside the fire extinguisher and the firefighting foam that's used. Reason these compounds are so desirable is, as I said, water and heat resistance. But what makes them desirable as products also makes them very, very difficult to dispose of. And so you get these compounds that are building up in concentration in landfills, in soil, in water, and even in our air. Goal of the new regulation, the goal of all of this is to reduce these compounds, the concentration of these compounds. At least for public water utilities, we're responsible for reducing them in the water source, even though we didn't put them there. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the government giving this as an unfunded mandate? Or are there grants that we can use because this is an expense that the city has to?
Ultimately, it is going to be on the utilities. I think there will be plenty of funding out there. and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later in the presentation. I'll come back to that. So we can go to our next slide. How are we going to deal with this? So there's three parts to this new regulation related to these compounds. And the first part is an initial sampling and monitoring period that's established by and required by the EPA, and that has to be complete by the year 2027. Good news there, we've started our sampling at the beginning of 2023. We are ahead of most utilities on this sampling and monitoring. We started this as part of what's called our UCMR 5 sampling and monitoring. That means 5th unregulated contaminant monitoring rule. We started looking at this back in first quarter of 2023, so we have 7 quarters, almost 2 years. By the end of this year, we'll have 2 years worth of data to analyze and look at related to our source water at Royal Spring. Second part of the regulation, 2027, after that, this becomes part of our DNA. This becomes one of our samples that we do every quarter. And that will be in perpetuity. We will always be monitoring for these chemicals, and likely will be, I anticipate that the EPA will be expanding what we monitor related to these kinds of compounds. Where this really goes into effect is 2029. The EPA will require all drinking water utilities to meet a maximum contaminant level, an MCL, for these compounds in our water. That's the water that's treated and goes out into the system for consumption of our by our customers. So, next slide, please. That's the three components of the regulation as best as I can kind of boil them down. That's the three parts. So, what is this maximum contaminant level, this MCL? And what do our sampling results look like so far? So the EPA has established that in 2029, our maximum contaminant level, so our maximum concentration that we can have in our treated water will be 4 parts per trillion. And that's technical, that's scientific. What does it mean though? And so utilities and our regulators, we've worked to develop kind of as best of an analogy that we can get, and this comes from EPA and Division of Water, is that think about 4 parts per trillion. Think about your eyedropper or your Visine, 1 drop. That's what we're talking about. Four drops in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That's the concentration, the maximum concentration that we can have for these types of compounds in our treated water. When we first started discussing this, there wasn't even a test that could test to that concentration. Now that's been developed. But that's what you're looking at if you want to truly understand what 4 parts per trillion of one of these compounds is. So that's what the goal is in 2029 that we're going to have to hit. And as I said, we've started sampling. So what does it look like compared to that future MCL? So our water in Royal Spring coming out of it, most of the sampling has shown that we're below that. I've got averages here on the right-hand column. So for that family of the PFOA, we're at 2 parts per trillion, so we're under. But as I've told you many times, I don't hide from the data, good or bad. We've had some spikes above that future MCL. We've had some hit at 6 parts per trillion.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What about Kentucky American?
I'm not aware of what their results are yet.
Okay.
We're ahead of most for me to be able to talk about this so far, but I'm sure their results will be made available.
Okay.
As ours will through our consumer confidence report.
Thank you.
So when I say, we've got 6 parts per trillion, that sounds scary, right? Because that's over this proposed MCL. But I would also say, remember, context is important, okay? So we have had some spikes. In addition to just the MCL, the EPA has developed a calculation to help us better understand our results and how they impact us. And the hazard index takes our data, and through a calculation, this is similar to how they do on Superfund sites, we assign a value to our data to determine the hazard of this concentration of these compounds in our water. So the hazard index, after you calculate it, it's a scale from 0 to 1. 0 being no hazard, 1 being where EPA will start to be concerned. If your hazard index came back a 3, you'd be very concerned. So far, our hazard index is 0.1. So that is minimal concern, at least to me, from if I'm looking at that. And that's even with the numbers that we've sampled where we've seen something over the MCL. You still have to run it through that hazard index. So they're going to look at MCL, but they're also going to look at that HI, and that's how we're going to be graded come 2029. But right now, we're in good shape based on the hazard index. Yes, sir.
In your testing, are you testing the same areas, just at different days or times?
Yes, sir. Same sampling locations.
And what about the variables in terms of the climate, the rain, different things?
So
I guess I'm getting
what
at,
I
when you
think
saw
you're
the
looking at-
6, what was the?
You're
what were the
looking for a trend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause and effect. So far, we haven't been able to find a trend with our data. And I think that's because of the unique characteristics of our aquifer recharge area, that it stretches all the way into downtown Lexington. We get a lot of stormwater, different types of land. We have a wellhead protection committee, but almost 2 years in, I don't know that we're going to be able to track a trend, whether we see climate, whether we see rain events, on how that impacts. I don't think, at least so far, I can't stand before you and say there's a pattern. Haven't seen it yet. So the hazard index makes me feel good about where we're headed, but because we have some of those, I do think that by 2029, we will have to do something at our water treatment plant. Going to talk a little bit about that. Any other questions on this slide before we move on?
Yeah, Chase.
Yes, sir.
What about the water we're getting from Frankfurt?
We'll be watching their results as well.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see, because Frankfurt Plant Board, where we purchase water sourced from the Kentucky River, different pools, Kentucky American for a lot of central Kentucky's Kentucky River, we're from Royal Spring, and then you've got down the road, you've got Louisville water sourcing from the Ohio River. It's going to be really interesting to see how all the data comes in as compared, who has the highest levels.
Yeah.
We'll go to the next slide, please. So I want to look forward. As I said, 2029 will be the year that the rubber hits the road, I guess, and to ensure that we meet or exceed, even though we exceed compliance level, even though we don't want to be over the MCL, we will have to better optimize, improve, and upgrade our water treatment plant. We know that we have to do something that can guarantee that by 2029, if not sooner, that we won't have anything hit that's over 4 parts per trillion. So project, that means dollars. And coming back to what you said, there's going to be grants out there that will chase every one of them down. We have already applied for and received funding for 2 parts of this. First being a engineering analysis and study on what our numbers look like. Hopefully we bring in the right professionals. We can find that trend. That'll help us. And then we've also secured funding for a project at our water treatment plant, where we can add a treatment process that will help us remove these chemical compounds from our source water as part of our treatment process. Those 2 funding sources are from the state legislature in the last budget cycle that Senator Thayer helped us secure with that block of projects that we worked with him on. Next part of that, Georgetown Municipal has joined 2 class action lawsuits against the producers of these compounds, and we will receive a monetary settlement that we can use that funding, that settlement money, for a project at the water treatment plant. And there's scorecards. Those settlements are already complete, and now they're at this phase. And our outside counsel would be better to explain that, but now they have a scorecard for how each utility will get a piece of that settlement. And we've opted into that. We've been a part of that, and we will get a settlement at some point. And I do think it'll be significant enough that it does put a dent in whatever that project cost is in the future. Any questions there?
So do we have a cost estimate for what this might cost, even if we get no grants?
I do not at this point, because I don't know what the project is yet.
The reason why I'm asking is because it's become evident in light of the election that a lot of these federal programs are going to be scrutinized very carefully and possibly eliminated. And I, in light of that, am still very concerned that even if the EPA regulations are gone, which is a distinct possibility, that we have enough danger from these forever chemicals that I would like to know what it might cost for us as a council and a city, and if the state's funding that we anticipate getting is also coming from the federal funding, which might be eliminated, will our state still be able to give us some of those funds? So there's a lot up in the air that I hope that we will keep track of as far as keeping our water clean and pure, and I'm hopeful that we're going to know what that cost would be, irregardless of whether or not the EPA is even still around.
Well, I think that we have that funding that's guaranteed at this point through that line item grant. And I think the starting place, which we hope to start on very soon, is that initial engineering analysis that we have funded.
Right.
And that's going to give us the answers. I will talk in a minute about kind of the 4 possibilities that we're going to be looking at, but let me get to that in just one second, if you will allow.
Thank you.
Chase, did you say there is a removal treatment process that has been installed in the system?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, sir. We can go to our next slide. Again, I want to emphasize that we've been proactive with this. We started our sampling early. We knew this was coming. And something else that I think is going to be a benefit for us and our customers is that we have partnered with Kentucky Division of Water, being the state arm of the regulatory agency, to look at these different treatment processes. There's 4 out there. There's really 2 that most utilities are looking at, and that's dealing with activated carbon. You dose your water with carbon. That also helps with taste and odor, so it's you get multiple benefits. Then you pull the carbon back out. These compounds adhere to the carbon, and then you pull it all out. That's 2 of the treatment methodologies. The other 2, not sure if they will be feasible at our plant, but that's what we're going to study and figure out, and then I'll have better answers for you on where we're going to go with this in the future. But we feel like because we were ahead of schedule, because we are responsive, that Division of Water actually sought us out in a positive way to partner on this and be really studying these solutions for this problem. I think that speaks well of Georgetown Municipal and our staff and how we deal with regulatory issues. So, next slide, please. This really gets to is what does this mean for us, but more so what does it mean for our customers? We're proud of our source water at Royal Spring. There's great history there. It's a good source of water. It's served our population very well. We're proud of how we treat water and the product that we send out to our customers. I drink this water every day, and this regulation, this information, as I said, it can be very scary if in the wrong context. This regulation is not about saying that our water is bad today. It's not about saying that our water has been bad for years. This is our industry saying we want to make our water quality even better than what it is today. So that's the context that I want to share. That's the message that I want to present. We want to improve our quality. We want to make it better regardless of regulation, what happens in the future with regulatory agencies. We want to make it the best that it can be. That's part of this. We're committed to that. So that's what I have tonight on this topic. Any questions?
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that our water is not bad, and I drink our water. I think it would be helpful for people to have an idea of, from a health standpoint, what these chemicals being accumulated, why there's such a cautionary tale that people think that this ought to be eliminated nationwide, so that in the future, if we need to continue to push ahead with this despite the regulations being lifted, we'll know why.
That's absolutely important, and I want to bring
Because I think they do accumulate in your body for your lifetime. So it's not that, oh, I've taken a drink of water and something bad's going to happen, but when you're 75, it might have an effect.
Sure thing. And I want to bring that info to you. I want that data, but I want it in a good message, in a real message that we're also not creating a panic
Exactly.
around what I feel like as a nation we have very good water, and as a utility I think we have very good water. So
Thank you.
Our next slide, please. Okay, this is our second topic, switching gears a little bit, the lead and copper rule improvements and the lead and copper rule revision. And that's specifically related, what we've been working on is our lead service line inventory. So back in 2021, the EPA mandated that all water systems, again, public and private, had to complete a comprehensive inventory or survey of all of our service lines. Your service line is what goes from the public main that we own into the house, your residence or your business, whatever type of structure that you have that needs service, that's your service line. It gets interesting on this new rule, and because we are responsible as the public utility to do this inventory on part of a line that we do not own. We own from the main to the meter on the service line. Customer owns beyond that into the structure, into the residence, and we don't own that yet. We are responsible with this rule to inventory that, so it's been a challenge. It's been unique. This is not something that's just happening in Georgetown. This is across the nation, every utility, public or private. We have to identify the pipe materials. We have to document those materials, give that documentation to Kentucky Division of Water, and then communicate the results to our customers. The goal of this very immense effort is to identify any type of piping in our system that's hazardous, and then get that information to the customer. If we find something that's hazardous, in the form of lead or galvanized pipe, we know that it has to be scheduled for replacement. So lead piping once was a common material. However, since it was determined to be hazardous, it was no longer allowed in Kentucky since January 1, 1988. Thankfully for us, most of our system has grown after that, so we knew going in that we thought we would have a favorable outcome to this inventory. Next slide, please. So how did we do this? What was our methodology? We started off by taking a hard look at anything we could related to records research. We looked at record drawings, design drawings, pictures, building inspection reports, anything that had a date or a pipe material. If it was post January 1, 1988, the construction, we knew that it didn't have lead, so we could eliminate that. We could say that was a non-lead service line. Then after we completed that part, eliminated those, and we went out and started the physical inspection. We were either digging, pulling out meter pits, seeing what types of pipes we had. We also started a customer survey where the customer could do this on their own by looking at the pipe that came into their house before it branched out into their internal plumbing. Some customers called us and said, we want to do it, but come help us. We did that. And then the final part was a statistical approach with a sample size and looking. We tried not to rely on that. That's what most utilities are doing. Division of Water approved that approach, but we were almost done with our survey when they did. So we tried to minimize that because we feel like our other methods were more accurate. But we did utilize that on some of the places where we just could not access and see what we wanted to see. So, next slide, please. Kind of our results. Well, we completed our survey September 19th of this year and submitted that to Kentucky Division of Water the week before the October 16th deadline. And we completed a survey of 16,046 service lines. We did this all in-house, and we did it without the assistance of a consultant or contractor, which I think we're one of the few that were able to do that. So, next slide, please. What did we find? Well, when we started this, two of my senior employees that have been here over 25 years working in the distribution department, they said, we're not going to find anything. Mark it down. And I said, I don't believe it. And they were right, I was wrong. They said that we've been eliminating these all along as we found them, and they called it. They didn't find any lead in the system. They didn't find any galvanized iron or steel that requires replacement through this. So we are in very good shape. We're very fortunate, even in older parts of town where they built out prior to '88. We'd already done some projects years ago to get that lead piping out of the system. So we don't have that piping that presents that hazard to our customers. Very proud of this effort. Our staff from engineering, distribution, even our customer service staff jumped in, did an outstanding job. We're very proud of this effort. Questions?
That's very good, Chase. No lead, no copper. That's good.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Very good.
It's one less thing we can worry about. We've certainly got enough enough of the other issues on our plate, but that's one we can check the box and say we're complete.
Thank you so
Good,
much.
thank you, Chase.
Thank you all so much. Happy Veterans Day to all that served. We appreciate you.
All right, thank you, Chase. Appreciate that update report. Next on the agenda, going to be City Attorney, and she's going to come up in, is going to talk about 3 different items. And if you have questions, you can ask her about those. Thank you, Emily. And
All right.
who'd you brought with you?
What?
Who'd you bring with you?
Yeah, so good afternoon. I have Attorney John Langford here. He's here on behalf of his client, who approached the city with this request. So I'm just going to do just generally kind of the framework we're working in, and then I'll turn it over if you have any questions. So as you know, the city has public ways, the public right-of-way, streets, alleys, that sort of thing. Sometimes the city council decides they want to close it. Sometimes people come to you all and make their requests. KRS 82405 is a statute that dictates what the process is to close that public way. Tonight, in part of this discussion, there's 2 different routes we can go, and what we are bringing you tonight is closing this via ordinance. But before you do that, you have to make a couple of findings of fact. So under the statute, those 3 findings are: 1, identification of all the property owners in or abutting the public way that's being closed, and that essentially means that the properties that are touching that way. That written notice of that proposed closing was given to all of the property owners that abut the property, and that all of those property owners have consented to the closing. So in your packet, we did outline that we have identified the property owners. If you look at the consolidation plat that was included as Exhibit A, you'll see that there really is just 1 property owner. So that was easy. I did send a letter notifying them of the proposed closing, and that we'd be having this conversation tonight. And Exhibit B to that ordinance is that consent, that they are okay with it. So those 3 findings can be found. Before I go on, I'm going to turn it over if he wants to share information about what it is, or if you have questions, please direct them to him.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I don't know what I can add that does much better than what Emily just did, but the owner of the property that surrounds this 10-foot wide alley is Bourbon Street Partners. They have a development plan with the planning office right now to build some townhouses. This alley runs basically, as you can see on the plat on your packet, runs through a portion of the middle of the property. I brought with me, Emily, I got copies of all of the deeds for the properties that they acquired, just for the record, so that we can have them, so that we can see that they actually do own everything around the alleyway. Are there any questions that you all would have?
Anybody got any council? You have questions for Mr. Langford?
Okay, I'll take those from you. So then I guess we'll go ahead with the first reading, and then we'll have the second reading on the 25th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
An ordinance related to the closing of an unnamed and unused alley located between the south side of Bourbon Street and the north side of East Washington Street and perpendicular to the west side of Penn Alley. Determining that the property owners abutting the unnamed and unused alley to be closed have been identified, been provided with written notice of the proposed closing and consented thereto in writing, and authorizing the mayor on behalf of the city of Georgetown, Kentucky, to execute a quitclaim deed and any all other documents reasonably necessary to effectuate the transfer of the formal right-of-way, unnamed and unused alley, to the abutting property owner, subject to the reservation of easements and restrictions containing. Summary 1. Makes the required findings of fact under KRS 82405 subsection 2 and declares an unnamed and unused alley located between the south side of Bourbon Street and the north side of East Washington Street and perpendicular to the west side of Penn Alley to be closed. 2. Authorizes the mayor to execute a quitclaim deed to transfer the former public way to the abutting property owners. 3. Provides for repeal of ordinances, severability of provisions and effective date upon passage of publication, and recording in the land records of the
Okay, so moving on to the next item, I have an update for you about medicinal cannabis here in Georgetown. So we've talked Georgetown and Scott County on this. I'm just going to focus on the city component. But as you saw, the citizens of Georgetown voted yes on the ballot question of whether I guess we wanted cannabis businesses to operate in city limits. So following that, we had sent the question to the ballot. So now there's a decision point. Since those businesses will essentially be allowed to operate here, you all have a couple of choices. You can choose to do nothing, or you could pursue the path of having some zoning regulations established to govern time, place, and manner restrictions on where these types of businesses could locate or operate within Georgetown. If that is what you would like to proceed with, tonight I would just encourage you to keep the conversation just kind of focused very generally. The next step in this, the Planning Commission would have a hearing on the proposed zoning regulations, and so we just want to be mindful and maintain separation with that hearing process and what you all would be asked to do if the recommendation from the Planning Commission is to adopt the proposed regulations. The packet for the Planning Commission meeting is up on the Planning Commission's website, so you can go look and you can see what those proposed regulations are, as well as maps to help you kind of visualize what the different types of businesses are and where those would fall within Georgetown and Scott County. Holden is here from the Planning Commission if there are questions more generally, but I guess that's the first conversation we're having. Would you like to proceed with that, going through establishing zoning regulations for these types of uses or not?
Any discussion on that? Go ahead, Mr. Anybody?
Yes, thank you. That would be my suggestion, opinion, is that, you know, we just wait and see what the Planning Commission does, and you know, review, in the meantime, review what, you know, what's out there. But you know, I wouldn't want to, you know, personally, I wouldn't want to say anything that may influence the planning and zoning's thinking or at this point.
Excuse me, any other comment?
I have a question, and I may have heard this wrong, but is there a limit on the number that I think there is. Do we know what that limit is?
I believe there's two.
Two?
I think if I'm not mistaken, correct me
I
wrong.
can find out for you.
We
for
can
sure.
find out, but it's not going to be very many.
Okay.
I mean, we get, I think, maybe we just get one, I believe, in our
And then
particular
the
area.
county gets one? Or is it
No.
Georgetown and
I
county
think it-
together gets one?
I think it's just one,
Okay,
but we can find out to make sure.
okay.
But what I understand it to be is one. I know there will be some other venues that may get two, but I know we're getting one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll proceed.
When you say one license,
Like I said, we'll get that information to you, but I believe just one
You're talking about the
establishment.
licenses issued from the state?
Yep.
Because there's cultivation, there's
Right.
dispensary, there's,
Yeah, there's 5 different types of operations,
Uh-huh.
and they have a scheme for how they're licensing that. I'll figure out the specific number.
okay.
Yeah.
But one thing you need to understand that, you know, this would be run by the state.
Right.
Not by us. This is all done by the state. Okay?
So will our ordinance, if we write one, have wording in there about distance from certain institutions, from also include wording about fees?
Holden,
Yeah.
if you would come up, please.
Yeah, it would be helpful to hear some of that.
If Mr. Holden, would you state your name, please, sir?
Yes, Holden Fleming, Director of Georgetown Scott County Planning. There's a frog in my throat. Hey, guys. So yes, to answer Councilmember Allen's question there, the ordinance as currently proposed and to be considered by the Planning Commission this Thursday, we have certain restrictions that are specific to the different business type, as was alluded to by Ms. Hambrick. But we also have general standards that will apply to all medicinal cannabis businesses. So right now, as currently proposed, we would implement a 1,000-foot buffer from all schools, childcare facilities, public parks, and public recreational facilities. And we're also requiring a 100-foot setback, or proposing a 100-foot setback from all residential zones and residential uses in the A1 zone. And so yes, we are definitely taking into consideration not just the use where it will sit, but what's next to it.
Will that also include daycares or?
Yes.
I didn't hear it, okay. Maybe you said it.
Any other questions for Mr. Holden while he's still up?
And then you also said it would include fees, correct?
So I don't believe that we have specifics for the fee schedules inside of this at the moment. However, can certainly be something that the Planning Commission or the City Council can take a look at. Right now, I think the idea would be to lean on the state.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
So on the topic of fees, so the way it's structured, so while this is the state's program, under KRS 218B, 218B 130, local governments can impose a special local fee. That amount is limited. It has to kind of reflect, let me get the language. It can't be more than what the state license is, and then it has to actually kind of reflect what the potential impact on the services that you might need in response to allowing this type of activity in the city is. So we'd have to do some research on that and make sure that we put, kind of like we're doing for the development impact fees, do a little bit of research and make sure that we come up with a fee that actually accurately reflects that. You can't just charge an outrageous amount. But the one thing is, because Scott County also voted yes, that fee that you might impose would have to be shared between the city and the county. So another action item for you tonight is the city council interested in pursuing a fee? And if so, we would need to speak with the county, see if they're interested, and then we would essentially pursue an interlocal agreement to set up what the structure of that fee and the administration looks like there.
I would be interested in a fee.
Yeah.
Now, if I can ask a question, Emily, I think we talked about it today. So if for some reason, let's say we did not talk about doing a fee, now county could still do a fee if they want to. Would we still get some of them money from that, or have to still split with us?
I think it's set up to still be shared.
We'd be shared no matter what.
Because the impact, it's gonna be hard to measure.
Right. Okay.
If the city was only allowing it and the county was not, or vice versa, you can kind of delineate a little bit better, but it'd be harder to draw that line.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have any idea of what that fee might be? Do you have an assumption?
So the fees for the licenses are I think a couple thousand. They're pretty high. I don't know what that would look like locally, just because we'd have to do the research to figure out how that reflects the local impact, and what that could be.
Well, the state would get some of that fee too, right?
No, so this is a local fee. So the state has, it's kind of like our ABC licensing. The state has its license fees. We have the local license fee.
Is it gonna be a one-time fee?
I think it would be, it depends how you set it up.
Okay.
But I think it would be a recurring, when you have to renew your license,
Gotcha.
you would renew your fee.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd be like you, Willow. Yeah.
And I believe the state and their fees, if you looked at it, I've got some literature on it, it's pretty substantially high. I mean, you talk about in the millions.
Okay, so we'll proceed with that. Thank you. The next thing, switching gears to the special events ordinance. At our last, I guess the last time we had this update, there were kind of a few action items that you all had asked and questions that you had. And so I have an update on those. The first question was about the application process and who was involved with that, just making sure it was going to reflect what we need. So following that meeting, Tracy, city clerk, Patrick Johnson, our risk manager, and Lori from tourism, and we had a meeting just to kind of bring those four lenses to the table. Tracy, as far as I know, she is in agreement with the proposed process that we talked about last time, and is on board with what I'm about to present to you all just as a follow-up. So I just want to give you that information. If you can put up the map. So it's kind of hard to see, and one of the things that we talked about was coming up with another option for the races and the events downtown. Chief Allgood and his team with the traffic unit, they did work with John's Run Walk Shop out of Lexington. And there is a route that has been proposed out at Lanes Run. This is a map. If you can kind of look, it's really hard to see. There's kind of like a red line that kind of goes around the property. I don't know if you can tell. That is what they came up with, just based on Lanes Run being the option. I will say with this, if you look in the top right, it does go on to BCTC's campus. He has communicated with BCTC, and they would be, if we pursued this, there are some considerations they have, because we would be going on to their private property. But this is the result of that request. I can send you this in an email so you have the map where you can pull it up a little bit easier, but any questions or concerns about this proposed route? Okay. That's that. Sorry, I have lots of papers. One of the next things that we talked about, there was a request in the ordinance that maybe we explore looking at city-sponsored events and kind of differentiating those from events that are just held by nonprofits or other private organizations. And talking with Lori and just looking through the list of what were all the events that we have kind of consistently had each year. The events that we kind of earmarked as city-sponsored, which we would have to define in the ordinance, but essentially it means the city is having an active role in either sponsoring it with money or putting it on themselves. The 4th of July Parade, the Chili Cook-Off, the Festival of the Horse, the Thriller Parade, the Fire Prevention Parade, the Holiday Parade and tree lighting, and then we also talked about the Martin Luther King March. So those are what we came back with, is potentially what would fall in that definition of a city-sponsored versus other events. Any questions about the list of events?
What about the party on the squares? Because usually, even though it occurs on Court Street, Main Street's blocked off too.
I will follow up with her. We did not earmark that because where it is on the square and trying to differentiate true closure of Main Street. Oh yes, sorry. We will also have a pavilion soon.
Right.
And I think the thought is to push those over to the pavilion. Thanks, Tracy. With the pavilion, where that is, I guess the county's, we don't know what that vetting process would look like as far as their application process and reserving the pavilion. But I think her goal is we would utilize that space for a lot of these events to free up the court area. Okay. Any other questions on that? Okay, I'm gonna keep moving. One of the things that we had talked about was communication and what that would look like leading up to an event, and also who would be responsible for that. So the applicant versus the city versus tourism. There's kind of two different components here. One, we talked about a community survey, specifically targeted towards the downtown businesses since they're the ones that are directly impacted, and then maybe a more community-wide survey. It was Lori's recommendation that with the November and December being the holiday season and like their really busy season, it may be worth waiting until January, which is kind of like the down period, to conduct that survey and have that engagement with the downtown businesses. We don't have to do that, but that was just her recommendation, just based on how busy they get with the season. At that point too, ideally, the pavilion project will be complete and some of the parking issues might be resolved. Any questions about the timing of that potential survey?
I don't know, I can understand, I guess, waiting, but the urgency from the business owners to see that we're still following up on this and taking some action.
Yeah.
I don't know if waiting is the.
Plus, if we push it off and wait, we're gonna have those organizations that wanna jump in early and say, hey, we want our event. How do we go? Nope, not until we get this ordinance done.
Well, you could impose a moratorium, I suppose, and not allow any applications to come through, but So we can pursue that survey and that engagement sooner to get ahead of it, so you have that data, if that's your wish. Just wanted to.
I heard that maybe the business owners have met and surveyed themselves. Has that been unearthed, or has that happened, or is that just a rumor, or?
That didn't come up in our conversation that I remember, but we can
Okay.
follow up on it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions on that particular survey? No. Okay, so the other part was kind of the bigger communication. We kind of brainstormed, what do we already have access to versus what would we need to invest in to resolve this communication component. So one thing that we did talk about last time was that the applicant would need to present essentially a communication plan to show what they are planning to do. What came up from you all in response is what can the city do to help with that. So we, at least with our current website, we do have an alert center and we do have our calendar, and we may be able to, click a couple buttons behind the scene, and that is something that if people subscribe, they can get text or email updates. And so we can create essentially an events notification process through our current software that we have, or through our website. Tourism had mentioned that if we needed to, there's text software out there. We could invest in that, but we would have to get quotes and go through a procurement process to see what we need there. So I think with, using our website more proactively, getting all these events posted, trying to set up what we have, will give us a baseline to figure out what we need to do to improve that communication. And then also, that obligation that could be imposed on the applicants to also communicate and get messages out there. Those were kind of our options that we came up with. We also talked about maybe the calendar that the news graphic has, publishing things either in the paper or online. Just trying to think of all the outreach that we have without having to spend additional money. Any questions on that topic?
I think the simpler the better, and trying to keep one point of contact. If it's the city website, that everybody knows to go to that location to find out information on events, without trying to say, well, it could come from here, it could come from here, a lot of different places, trying to simplify it. Be my suggestion.
And that's something that wouldn't be built into the ordinance, because that's more of an administrative thing, but it was asked specifically what that would look like. The other thing that we had talked about, the insurance, and it kind of ties in with the bigger conversation we had about imposing or requiring some type of deposit or charging essentially a different fee for this event based on the event size. From an insurance requirement, we can certainly scale what is needed or required for an applicant based on what is the type of event, and then you add in factors such as, will there be alcohol? Will it be, 1,000 people or 50 people? You can really scale that. And if you look at, are you using the street? Are you using, like where we are currently, just a portion of a right-of-way, things like that. We discussed imposing in the application process, instead of just requiring proof of insurance at some point, thinking of ways that we could just explore requiring that, because I guess sometimes you don't always have the insurance or the certificate in hand when you apply for the event. So just thinking through how we can just build in a better process to make sure that we get the document we need before the event happens, and that would be something that would be built in, like kind of a condition of approval that you all could impose. We also talked about them providing a declarations page, maybe instead of the certificate of insurance, just working through what they could give us, maybe that they don't have access to immediately. Any questions on that?
I do. Wouldn't the insurance company be able to do like what you said, a declaration page, but make it effective whatever date that the event was going to take place?
We can explore that. I don't know what different companies' policies are, but I think with this they could do that. Just have to see.
A lot of local insurance companies will work with you usually.
Yeah, so I think we can get there.
Yeah.
Any other questions on insurance? No? And so that kind of brings us to some of the decision points. So like I mentioned, we had talked about, a deposit based on size, and the purpose of the deposit being making it easier to recover if they use police and public works and maybe fire, that deposit could make it easier to recover those services. A decision point, and this is a piece of the draft ordinance that we would like some direction on. Do you like that general, just big deposit number, or do you want to explore the scaled concept where it's based on size or number?
One price, you want it, it's a $500 deposit, because it is, has caused a lot of headaches over the years. I think that will, if they want Main Street, they can do it. We can do a lesser fee for, you want the city parking lot, that there's a lesser fee for that, but you want Main Street, it's the bigger fee. Not only, plus also we need to make sure and add Tracy's fee in there as well, administrative fee.
So the way we're currently going about it is that fee would be the application fee, and that would be upfront with the application to recover her office's time for getting it to this point. That deposit or that other fee is the separate component for the city services above and beyond what just that initial processing looks like.
The only concern I would have with, having separate fees, I think you should have one fee. Whether it be to use the city parking lot or anything we have, it should be a standard fee. So it's $500, that's the fee would be. Now, if it costs us more than $500, then we just bill them back, said, hey, this costs $700, so therefore you owe us that, or we can bill them that much. I just like the idea of having a one fee. It's easy for her to administer that or try to figure out, okay, you're gonna use this smaller venue, so we're gonna give you a small amount. Just make it all the same, and if it doesn't cost that much for them to use that, then that covers it. If that makes sense.
What about and maybe this doesn't apply, but the situation we had this year, I believe, where they wanted to do the teal ribbons. Would that not apply in this case, or?
So really that type of thing kind of falls more under it's more similar to signs and banners.
Okay.
It's not really an event.
Okay.
But if you want to include that type of thing in your event process, we could consider that, but it's a little bit different.
Because they're not asking us to do that, they were actually doing themselves. Is that correct?
They just wanted permission
to put it up
walk down
themselves.
the sidewalk.
They're putting up the bows on the city
Yeah.
property, and that's more like putting up signs or banners, it's a message, rather than a single event. Okay. Do you all have any questions about any of that, or any additional things that you've thought of that you would like us to consider? The last meeting we had, the sentiment was kind of we want to slow walk this a little bit to make sure we get it right. But also, if you've changed your mind, we have 2 more council meetings this year. So if you would like to see what a first draft looks like, we can move that quicker and get that before you sooner. Just trying to gauge where you're at so we can get it moving.
I think the impetus from the start was because we were getting some complaints that we're closing Main Street too often, and actually Main Street is a state road.
Mm-hmm.
And so have we looked into the legalities of this as well? What?
Yeah, so with the state road, technically they should be applying for a right-of-way encroachment permit with KYTC, and they should get that permission and provide proof of that. That is contemplated and built into the proposed application process, that they have to have that permission or have obtained that prior to their event happening. And that's really just for a full closure. Some of the rolling stops we have, sometimes with the 5Ks or with certain events, you don't really need to close the whole street. It's kind of just you're moving with it as people get through. Situations kind of differ, but if you're planning to close the state road, you have to get their approval you all don't have permission, or you can't close that.
So currently, we're in non-compliance with the state when we allow the entire road to be shut without getting state approval.
I would encourage you as best practice to make sure that we have that in place before granting that type of closure.
Okay. Any other questions for Emily?
So be it.
I applaud
Only
you.
one that, back to the 5K, is that out at Lanes Run, is that the only 5K route that we're gonna offer?
So I can get clarification for you. So I believe the current routes that we have, there are 2 routes downtown, one of which does not touch Main Street at all. I'm still getting the geography down, but I think it's like Military, that side. There's a smaller route, and that's based on the anticipated participant number. So if you all still want to keep those smaller routes, I do know the police department likes to have kind of that ability to be able to, you don't know what's going to be else is happening that day, and them being able to have a little bit of wiggle room to adjust what the routes look like. That's a benefit. So we don't want to peel it down to just one route, but I think based on current options and availability, that was the low-hanging fruit, was to look at moving it either 2 Lanes Run or the park on the north side of town.
And you all chose Lane Run Business Park.
We haven't chosen anything.
Okay.
But where that is city street, city's property, it was easy for us to look at that and explore the use there.
Okay.
Yep. So I guess I will, if you would like, I'll take all this feedback and I will go ahead and finalize that first draft, so that can come back to you all. We'll go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Just to make absolutely sure, did you say we have or have not talked to the business owners downtown about what we're talking about tonight?
We have not, as far as I know, we have not taken that step of actually engaging with them yet.
Okay.
It was requested to look into it. So if that is something you would like to proceed with now, which I think that was the general consensus, that'll be the next step, is working with Lori, just because she is our primary contact for that, to get a survey together to actually speak with them.
I think it's, again, I'm just one opinion, and I've only had 2 meetings left, but there are businesses downtown that depend on foot traffic. I understand there might be 1 or more businesses that don't want to shut down Main Street at all. I get that. No, actually I don't get that. But that's beside the point. I think it's very important
To know.
that we know
Yeah.
from the people downtown that own businesses what their opinion is.
I agree.
Whether it's a jewelry store, a restaurant, any business downtown, we have to remain business friendly and not make things more challenging for downtown. There are many downtowns throughout this state that would love to have the challenges we have. They'd love to. We've got a very successful downtown right now, and I just think we gotta know, we have to involve them in this process if we're looking to change things. And that's all I've got.
And I will say, just as a reminder, I didn't say it clearly earlier, but those events that I pinpointed, what we had talked about the last meeting is those are the events where Main Street closure would be allowed under the ordinance. So those city-sponsored events is what you would be looking for that closure. The other events, the way it would be proposed is that's not the preference. There might be different circumstances where you would want that grace, but that's kind of the scheme we're going for, just to limit how many times a year and what kind of events would trigger that closure. So, okay.
I don't think the issue is with some of the people in downtown is that, they feel like we're closing it too much for everything. So if we were to tell them that, hey, this is only really for city city-sponsored events, they know what city-sponsored events there are. I think it's like probably 4. So there'll be 4 times of the year that we actually close downtown. But I see what you're saying, Mr. Showalter. I think the input from them will be very vital to make sure they understand what we're trying to do and get their input also.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, next. Next is going to be the finance. No, I'm sorry. To skip over him. Let's go to the city engineer. So, Eddie, you're going to come up and he's going to talk about the municipal order for the Indian Hills Stormwater Project and also B, the municipal order for the Main Street Sidewalk Project. Okay?
Thank you, Mayor. So this first project is for Indian Hills. It's a stormwater work plan. What we've noticed in the Indian Hills area is we have quite a few pocket flooding situations, and we're trying to go through the entire area and clean out a lot of ditches and pipes, head walls, that sort of thing, and sort of bring that up to how it was when they built the neighborhood. A lot of the ditches are silted up and need a lot of work, and we were going to do that work in-house with Public Works crews, and we wanted to get a game plan, get a map of our work plan, and that's what the engineering task order is for. And I asked for approval for the Indian Hills stormwater work project. If y'all have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Is this just Indian Hills or Indian Hills and Indian Acres?
It's Indian Hills. Yeah, no, we're going to try this there because it's an older section. They don't have a lot of curb and gutter. There's not a lot of piping over there. Everything flows through these ditches that run parallel to the street. So we're going to start there.
I need a motion. Motion made by Mr. Hampton.
I'll second.
Second made by Ms. Brent. Are there further questions or comments on this?
This project, what's the ultimate objective? And there's a reason I'm asking that. Is it just a temporary fix? Or is it
it's more of a maintenance project.
Okay.
That needs to be done to try to bring all the infrastructure up to where it was when they initially built the homes. Over time, they've fallen into disrepair, so it's a repair and maintenance project. It's a permanent project. Yeah.
I know we've had a lot of, somebody needs to stop me if I cross the line here. I know we're talking about Indian Hills, but we've had a lot of talk, a lot of discussion over the last 2 years about stormwater.
Yeah.
And this is just one small project.
Yeah.
And I know Mr. Stone just asked about Indian Acres.
Yeah.
But will this take care of just a small portion of Indian Hills, or does it really?
There's a map I can send you that shows the entire area. I don't think it made it into your packet, but it's the Indian Hills area. The best I can describe it. All the streets in that area. It's a pretty. I'll be happy to send you a copy of the map of what it covers.
Yeah.
All the streets in Indian Hills?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's a project that we budgeted for. We've been talking about it for some time. We've had a number of problem areas over there with some driveways and some areas get flooded and streets getting flooded, and we're going to try to address all those.
Okay. And I also believe that, some areas where the retaining wall and some of the structural walls are collapsing.
Yes, sir, that's
because all
correct.
the debris is built up in there. So you live over there, it just floods.
Mhm.
And of course, it gets in most people's basements and so on, and things that so this has been a problem for years.
Yes.
And people have addressed me about that, even on the street, say, hey, you know what? Mayor, when y'all gonna do something about over there? I said, my basement gets flooded all the time.
Yeah.
And it's because that water pools up because all the grass and debris gets there, and if it's not cleaned out, then it's just gonna back up and flood people's
That's exactly what's going
homes.
on, yeah.
So,
I'm gonna venture to say that it hasn't been cleaned out in a while.
oh, yeah.
And so that when you do proceed with this project, that I'm gonna put a plug in for the stormwater. If we had that, that would be something that you could maintain and work at on every year or every 6 months, I'm
I agree.
sure. Especially heavy rain.
Yes, I agree.
We have, yeah.
This is gonna give us a comprehensive plan
Mhm.
of attack to address these.
Alrighty.
But I hear you, Mr. Short, it's not gonna, you know, it's a start. It's a start, but, you know, we have a lot of bigger problems than that, but they gotta have a starting spot somewhere, and this, I think, is probably the place where you, from what constituents are talking to me about, it's a big concern for them, you know, so.
It has been.
Any other questions or comments? So I have a motion made, properly second. No questions? All in favor of the municipal order signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the motion for the municipal order Indian Hill Stormwater Project passed.
Thank you.
Next, item B.
Yes, sir, thank you, Mayor. So B is the Main Street, back to Main Street again, sidewalk project. And this project is to address the brick ban, the 2-foot wide brick ban that you see that houses all the overhead electric is underneath those bricks. And you've probably noticed they've settled, and there's trip hazards all up and down. And so this project is to assess those and then get construction documents so we can get a bricklayer in there to repair those.
I have a motion.
Motion, Mayor.
Motion made by Ms. Tackett. Do I have a second?
Second, Mayor.
Second made by Mr. Stone. Are there further questions and or comments? Go. And then you're next.
No, you're fine, please.
Will all of the brick on both sides
Yeah, all the brick, yeah.
taken up?
Yeah, we're probably gonna have to take up, if not all of them, almost all of them, and relay them. We're gonna reuse the brick, clean them off, reuse them, put something solid underneath for it to sit on, and do that, because if you've noticed, if you've ever walked down there and really looked close, you'll notice they've settled in a lot of spots up through there, and they've become trip hazards. And so we're trying to fix that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Will we try to place the bricks back
Exactly like
in
they
the
are.
same place or a similar location?
Yeah. Pick them off, set them to the side, put something solid down, leveling sand, brick back down in the same place.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've
That's
had
the
a
idea.
person that has several that asked me that question. Am I
Sure.
gonna have to
Yeah,
look
that's
in
the idea.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Allen?
My question is, I know nothing's foolproof, so at some point, we'll be back talking about the same issue again, more than likely, about trip hazards with brick. Not this council maybe, but some council in the future, so I'm not in favor of this for that reason, but I'd be more in favor of removing all the brick and building something around City Hall with all that brick, and just making flat sidewalks. I know that's not gonna happen, but that's why I'm gonna vote no on this, but.
Yeah.
Because I know that we'll be back in here using more money to repair a trip hazard again, because with all those bricks, they are going to move over time.
I understand.
Any other?
Yeah, and again, I respect that, I do, but I also know that people pay money for those bricks.
Yeah, I'm not saying throw them away. I'm saying build something with them. Yeah, I'm saying build something with them so you can still see the names, but we're just gonna be spending money on this again and sometime down the road, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions and or comments? Motion is made, properly second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise.
No.
Okay? Let the record reflect that motion passed.
Thank you all.
All right. Next, we have the Finance Department. It's the first reading of the bond ordinance, sponsors Alonzo Allen, Greg Hampton. And I think Stacy's gonna come up. I think she's got some people with her from Baird and so on to talk to us and take questions. And you know, we might call you all up to make sure that you all can tell us a little bit more about this. This is out of my area of expertise, so I'm gonna let you all guide us through that along with Stacy. All right, Stacy, go ahead.
Good evening. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about fund balance and projects and future plans. And so I know this is what I'm setting up for you right now, just a little bit of a big picture snapshot of our fund balance and finances so that you can consider whether or not to bond City Hall. So this document is something that I was presented to you all at a work session in the recent past. And I've updated the numbers because we're part of the way through the audit, and so most of our audit numbers have been updated. So City Council did pass the fund balance policy on October 28th, indicating that, you know, we would like to establish a 30% minimum fund balance that will be either the higher of the revenue or expenses for the next budget year. So our current budget for operating expenses for this year is $44.7 million. So our 30% minimum fund balance goal is around $13.4 million. And then what I have done in the following lines is our estimated or projected fund balance. Again, these numbers are still considered unaudited until the final report's issued. But so our current fund balance at June 30, 24 is $36.2 million. And of course, if we take off the top our $13.4 million that we've established as our minimum, and then you'll see a few categories of either non-spendable or restricted fund balance, restricted cash, and such. That leaves an unassigned fund balance, which is what you essentially have to work with for other projects and such, of about $16 million. And then we've listed just a few things that are coming up potentially soon, such as a couple of grants that you have on the agenda tonight that require a match, so they're not in the budget yet. So I've added those on there. A couple of other potential things, but essentially what this shows you is if you bond City Hall fully at the $10 million that's being proposed, then we have $36 million to start with and about $16 million to work with for future projects. I listed just a couple of things on there, such as land acquisition, you know, for the future development of Lexus Way, or fire department construction and apparatus, understanding that's just the construction portion. You know, just a few things there, and then cash that would be left over for other projects that future councils might want to consider. On the right-hand side is the other extreme if we don't bond anything at all. So if we pay cash for City Hall, then our fund balance would go down to 26.2, again keeping that 30% fund balance of 13.4, and you can see an unassigned of 6 million versus 16 million. So again, as we go through this discussion tonight, it is just something to think about, where if we choose to bond City Hall at a maximum of 10 million, up to 10 million, it gives you greater flexibility in the future if there are other projects that we want to do. And I'll bring Chip up here in just a moment to talk about just the technical aspects of bonding and to see if you have any questions before we proceed with a first reading. So before I bring Chip up, do you all have any questions about this worksheet? It's just, again, a tool for you all to use as you're thinking about whether or not you want to bond and the amount of a bond that we might choose. The Finance Committee has talked about anywhere between 5 to 10 million. The draft ordinance says a maximum of 10 million. Chip will talk a little more about the mechanics of how bond ordinances themselves are written and how we get to that final amount. But any questions about our fund balance and, yes.
I have a question, but it's not about the fund balance.
Okay,
It's about the city hall
yes,
renovation.
yes.
Is there a deadline that, and if so, what is that deadline that we have to make a decision on either bonding or paying in cash?
I will probably defer to Chip. We did adopt that reimbursement resolution in, I want to say, April of '22. It's been a little while, but we did adopt that, and either Chip or Mark can help talk a little more about the expiration dates of reimbursement resolutions. And of course, they'll talk a little bit too about how our bank qualified bonding resets every January 1. That's why the 10 million number is being used, and Chip will talk more about that, but I'll defer to that question to them. Just, we did do a reimbursement resolution. I'll let them talk more about when those expire. Any other questions about the numbers? Again, they're just a tool for you to look at. They're the two extreme scenarios of a $10 million bond issue versus no bond issue. Obviously, if we go somewhere in the middle, split the difference on those bottom numbers.
Mayor, are we gonna have discussion about some of the capital projects, or is that for a different time?
Maybe we can,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I was, that was not the intent for tonight. Those
Okay.
are just tools for you all to use of if you have some things in mind, or, you know,
We
it was just an illustrative purpose.
We can probably have a discussion on that. We will try to do that.
It is a regular meeting,
Yeah,
so you are able to talk about
yeah, I guess,
the
yeah,
strategy.
yeah. Well, thank you.
So with that, we've all talked about the fire station for quite some time, and I see it's on here. I'd like to add fire station payroll after the SAFER grant and earmark about $3 million back for that, just in case the recurring revenue is not available.
And there's also, we were talking about looking at some other, we call quality of life projects. You know, there are some parks that need some repair that we're gonna do, and that's probably a good reason why it's probably, you know, people talking about buying other things to get another park. You know, we gotta fix the parks we have here now first, and if we do that and do that, that's what people want. You know, people will use the products that we have if it needs repair, and we're doing that, and we need to invest in that. And also, we're talking about, you know, I hear people oftentimes talk to me about going over to Juniper Hills to swim, when all we got to do here is to add a pool here, which is a quality of life thing that will keep people here. So those are some of the other projects that we got on our radar. Okay.
Okay, I'm confused now.
Yeah.
So for clarification purposes, this information here, which was the first hand that you handed, just for clarification, maybe I'm the only one, I'm a little slow.
It's okay.
Tonight, are we only talking about City Hall?
Yes.
Are we now talking about other projects?
For approval purposes, we're just talking about, well, we're just doing a first reading of a city hall bond ordinance tonight. And in 2 weeks, we would hope to bring back a second reading for approval. These are just for discussion purposes as you decide how much or if to bond. City Hall. But for the bond ordinance as it's written, it is for the renovation of City Hall. That is in the bond ordinance. It is specific to that project.
So in this bond ordinance, and it's up to $10 million, it gives you the opportunity to be able to use the full 10 million, but it doesn't mean you would.
Correct. And like I said, I'll go ahead and bring Chip up for questions about the mechanics of bond ordinances and the timing of things. I think there were a couple questions that were sent to me today, and he can answer some of those about interest rates and when we decide that amount.
Okay, again, Stacy, can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
My apologies. Sorry.
That's good.
We've got 2 more meetings left after tonight.
Yes.
I know you've just for clarification purposes, we're only talking about City Hall.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I just heard another little discussion going on up here. Are we gonna have anything else brought to us before the end of the year on expenditures?
I think that what we're talking about now is how we bond it right now, and then from there, probably in the future, we'll be talking about, what are we now, if we bond $10 million of it, what are we gonna do with that $10 million that we have? Or what are some projects that gonna be doing with that? And that's something later we're talking about.
But is the intent there to bring that back over the next 2 meetings?
That, I don't know, but, I hear what you're saying, are we gonna talk
We
more
just
about
had a
that?
brand new city council elected.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
no,
gonna
I just
have
want
4 new members.
to clarify, this is just to bond City Hall.
Yes, bond
Okay.
City Hall.
And what it is whether or not you bond City Hall and in what amount you bond City Hall will give future councils potentially more flexibility
Okay.
in how they decide to spend fund balance.
No, I
That's,
we're on the
yeah,
same page.
yeah.
I completely understand. I don't mean to cut you off.
No,
I'm just getting clarification for
Yes.
what happens over the next 2 meetings.
the next 2 meetings are simply to discuss bonding $10 million towards the cost of City Hall. And then that will free up, if you so choose, that frees up $10 million of our fund balance for future councils to decide how to spend. Up to 10 million. So I'll let Chip talk about the mechanics of bonding a little bit for anybody who may have questions.
Sounds good. Also, I have my colleagues Kelly Mersich and Maria Long here with me, and then Mark Franklin from Dinsmore that can get into sort of the legal technicalities of the bond issue process. To answer your question directly, so what we have been targeting is a December 4th bond sale, and there are things that need to happen to keep that schedule. And that December 4th is strategic. We like to sell bonds typically the first week in December. We can go the second week in December. We'd rather get it done the first week in December. So to do that, we need a rating call. And on the rating call, it's not absolutely necessary we know exactly the number we're going to borrow, but we want to know pretty much the amount that we want to borrow. So our schedule is first reading tonight and then second reading 2 weeks from now, I suppose. The authorization is for up to 10 million, down by whatever. And then we came before the Finance Committee, Kelly and Marie and I came before the Finance Committee with the recommendation for the 10 million. So I'm gonna pause and see what questions there might have, but to answer your question about how long is it before we can tell you what number would be borrowed, I'd say probably if we want to keep the December the 4th date, probably even if we did it after the rating call, that's probably okay, Maria. I mean, what were we talking about on the way down? About the 19th or so? Or around the 19th? So really quickly, frankly. But again, we came to the Finance Committee with a recommendation for the 10 million. I'm happy to discuss why and or not, but that's what we have for you.
Well, the question I was asking earlier, in light of the interest rate change, how does that affect the bond rate?
Yes, ma'am.
And if we're trying to do the December 4th, will we see the bond rate fluctuation in that time, or what's usually the time gap between an interest rate change and possibly a bond rate change, because we want to get the most favorable rate possible?
Of course. So, and rates are pretty favorable right now. I mean, if we were to sell your bond today, 20-year bond financing, it'd be about 4% plus or minus, which is a good interest rate. I think you have some debt on your books that's around 3.5, 3 3/4, something like that. So the 4% rate is right there in the pocket. The rate that you're talking about is the Fed, the Fed funds rate. The Federal Reserve meets 8 times a year and sets, they may or may not move a target rate. The actual market determines what the overnight lending Fed funds rate is. Okay. And so when Chairman Powell comes out and says, hey, we as a Federal Reserve have determined that we want to lower the Fed target rate from 4 3/4 to 4.5%, reduce it by 25 basis points, generally speaking, unless it was a surprise, the market already has that factored into their interest rates.
Okay.
So, your rate, you're borrowing on a long-term borrowing rate, a 20-year rate. So that rate is determined by the market based on what they think is happening now and into the future. So we'll pause for a second there and gather my thoughts on it, because it is a little confusing when they say, hey, we're going to cut rates and we're going to cut rates. What does that mean for the future? Well, as long as, so the Federal Reserve, ever since the credit crisis, has really tried to signal to the market what they are going to do, because markets don't like surprises.
Right.
So the 10-year Treasury right now is at a 4.30 plus or minus 4.3%. That's what the 10-year Treasury rate is, the taxable rate for the federal government. That is as of today, and that is assuming several important things. The quarter cut that they've already talked about, the Federal Reserve also clearly indicated at this most recent meeting that they're going to do more cuts.
Right.
Our firm is Baird owns Strategas, which is a nationally recognized macroeconomic research firm, and they're forecasting another basically 100 basis points of future Federal Reserve cuts.
Wow.
So you'll end up with a Fed target rate maybe around 3.5%. In among other things, they project a soft landing for a recession, if you will. What does that mean? Well, it probably would mean the 4.3% today is what the 4.3% will be in the summertime. So they might lower the target rate on the short-term borrowing rates, but the long-term borrowing market already bakes that in.
Gotcha.
If we wake up in December and they're like, hey, we've got news that it's a lot worse than we thought, the jobs are bad, the Federal Reserve might make surprise cuts, more cuts than they had led to believe, then that's where we might see our long-term borrowing rates fall below where they are. So that's a long-winded answer, but I'll stop.
So I have a question as far as the interest rates go. So if you go to sell the bonds and you do it at the first week of December, are you locked into that interest rate?
It is a fixed rate, yes, ma'am.
So is there any option down the road as you're moving forward that if rates did drop, that we would have a one-time opportunity, that if we could lower our interest rate, would that be an option?
Well, no, ma'am.
Okay.
Here's how they would work, though. And this is kind of what we, as the team, debated. You have existing debt right now that's prepayable at no penalty. Okay. I'm brain blocking what was tied to. Is it the police station? Yeah, and a refinancing, but it's prepayable at no penalty.
Right.
And if we sell bonds December the 4th and we lock in, let's just say the rate's 4%, and you're going to be locked into that rate, and the city will pay the principal due as agreed on December of each year, December 1st of each year, and the interest due for 8 years. And at the end of an 8-year period, that's what we currently have baked into it, December 1st, 2032. At that point in time, the city could elect to pay down that debt as well. But the rate itself is locked.
All right. I guess my only question or my thought process is that we're $9 million in debt and they're up to be paid. We can pay them off, no prepayment penalty. So that would be $9 million, and then we're going to turn around and we're going to bond 10. So we're still going to be in that same debt, but I'm a little bit confused about, I want to pay cash for City Hall. That was from the very beginning for me. Obviously, I want to ask our Finance Committee, are you recommending that we bond for $10 million? Is that your all's recommendation?
As Chip alluded to, I mean, we're gonna up to 10 million. Now, it's at this council's discretion, how much we do. My opinion, I really don't like the idea of doing the full 10. I'm about halfway. Maybe do half of it, but I think that's something the council needs to discuss.
I just know that, we've been $19 million in debt previously, and it's taken us a while to get it paid down to be at $9 million. And that was back when we had $3 million in fund balance. So now we have 44. And even when we paid the $9.5 million for the radio towers and Lanes Run Business Park, it reflects in your budget when you're showing us back finances that we were down to like 13 million, but we built that back pretty quick within the next few years. So I'm hesitant to put the city $10 million in debt. I'm not totally opposed to not bonding some, but if we say 10 million, up to 10 million, you're gonna do 10 million, because it's gonna be an option to do that, because it's already on the books, unless you go back and change it. Is that not an
No,
option?
ma'am, no, we wouldn't do that. I mean, what we want from you all is, well, what number is it? But tonight, authorizing the ordinance as written is the easiest way to go ahead and get the first reading out of the way. And then if we really need to change it by the second reading, we can change it, but the preference would be to keep the ordinance as is and say we authorize up to an amount of 10 million, down by whatever, and that's what that features in there. We use this regularly with issuers, whether city, county, state, local governments, to get a big number authorized and then come down to what is agreed by council. What you can rest assured is we're not going to do something that you all don't want.
And we had talked about, this is a big decision.
Yeah.
Is like we had, the other week about the business park. That's big decisions. We need to sit and talk about it. We've got numbers now. We need to sit and think it through. So I recommended to Emily and the mayor that we have a work session on this so we can talk it through as a group. I don't think that we can make an answer tonight on it. I mean, there's varying opinions, and everybody needs to be heard. I just would rather see us sit and kind of sit with it for a little bit with ourselves and come back and talk it through.
But, of course, we could still go ahead and, put it there, and then
Yes.
we can still talk about it, and then if we want to come back, it's okay, let's do a different number, I think we can still do that.
Yeah, that's how in the finance committee, that's how we talked about
Right.
setting this up to $10 million, but the opportunity to talk about it as a group and then come back and put a number on it later, but get that first reading in.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
If you,
Go ahead, Mark.
can I say something if you don't
Yeah, go,
mind?
Mike.
Mark Franklin with Dinsmore, I'm your bond counsel. I just wanted to talk about how the ordinance works and the 10 million and all of that, so you understand. It'll give you comfort or it won't, but you'll understand how it works. So it does say up to 10 million, you can always do less. What the next step would be, if, say we give the ordinance first reading tonight and just to have first reading over with so you can still move on your schedule. When you decide your number that you want, you tell us what we're doing is we're preparing the sale document for the bonds that we use to market it to the underwriters that would bid on them. We would use that number. Chip would massage it a little bit, do their fancy thing to it, but it would go in that, and then there would be official bid terms in that document too, that the bidders have to basically bid to that number, the number you give us, and it'll say that we can adjust that a little bit. We can still adjust it even any amount down from that. So let's say you pick 5, just to pick a random, 5 million to pick a random number. Even in the sale, you can go down from that any amount, or you can go up 10% to allow Chip and his team to adjust for market conditions on the day of sale. And then the mayor will sign an award certificate on the day of sale that basically reflects the final number and all the sizing and interest rates. And then we have about 2 weeks to close and deliver the bonds to the winning bidder. So the ordinance does say up to 10. It says 1 series. So if we sign an award certificate that says 5, no one can come back and do a second series of bond for another 5. It's 1 series. So you don't have to worry about shenanigans with that. I just want to make that clear in case that gives anybody any comfort.
Mr. Stone?
Emily, correct me if I'm wrong. If we have first reading tonight, we make a change, it goes back to first reading again.
Yeah, you have to do another first reading to reflect the change. If you make a change, you would do another first.
If
That's
we
only up to the maximum of the 10 million. If we change that, I mean, you could still leave that the same and only do the bond issue for what we choose.
Right, you could leave the language up to 10, just tell us what number you want. That's the number we'll use to do the sale.
Right.
Yeah.
So we would not have to do another first reading, I don't think, not the attorney.
Unless you wanted the ordinance to specifically say the dollar amount, that's the change that would require another first reading, because that's a substantial, or a big change. to what you're doing.
But I think the safeguard in that is just this one issue. Once we issue that for that amount, it's done.
Right, and bidders and everyone else are bound to that once we put it in the offering statement, and the mayor has to award it based on what bidders bid, so that binds the mayor to it as well. So there's a process that makes it stick, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so make sure I understand what Tom was asking. So we keep the 10 million, up to 10 million in the first reading. We come back in 2 weeks, they're gonna do their thing. And then the bonds are gonna be issued. Will it be at that 10 million, or will we have the opportunity to say, no, we only wanna do it for 5?
So I think that's what he's saying is, so as written, you have the flexibility to, without putting in the ordinance, this just gives you like room to play. If you decide this is how much we want this to be issued for.
That's exactly
you
right.
tell them that it doesn't have to be said in the ordinance, as long
Okay.
as it's under that number.
All right.
Yeah.
But if you have the discussion that you wanted to set the number in the ordinance, that's what would trigger the second first reading.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you. Thank
And
you.
the second reading can be the 20, go ahead.
No, I'm not trying to talk myself out of a job, but you could decide you don't want to do it at all after first reading. So first reading's fine, yeah. Or see, even second reading, you can authorize the ordinance and still not issue the bonds. You could have a sale and not like the interest rates and not issue them. So you've got plenty of freedom even if you do the
Okay,
ordinance.
thank you.
I have a general question. Since you all are the experts on cities that bond, do you see that we are in a fiscal state that is amenable to bonding up to 10 million, that other cities, you know, take on this kind of risk and do well with it? Or
You
where
can answer
are
from a
we
legal
in this
perspective first. Yeah.
relative to other
Yeah,
places?
Yes, the general obligation debt up to 10 million. It's used regularly across the state. I mean, of course, this is what we do, so we say that, but it's true. I mean, I've had the pleasure of doing everything from city halls to public parks to water parks. You know, it's a great benefit, and we've done far more than 10 for cities of comparable size. So Chip is the number expert. He's the one who tells you what you can afford and can't, or what you should think about. But I've had, like I said, I love to work with cities to do public projects. That's what I do. So it's a lot of, it's certainly a good environment for that.
But
Still historically low rates.
Our 30% being built in,
Yeah.
and then taking on $5 to $10 million in a bond, even assuming that we've already got bond debt, that's not a superfluous or a risky thing for our city to do.
Not in our opinion, not for a city of your size,
Okay.
nor for the amount of debt you have outstanding. So the city as a whole, a lot of the debt that the city has is revenue-based debt. The highly rated Georgetown Municipal Water and Sewer System, and the repayment of that debt's matched by the revenues associated with it. The city's debt actually is pretty small.
Okay.
There is the pension liability that's on your balance sheet. It's reflected in sort of your credit, if you will. But that's not a liability that comes due today, sort of like debt does, but it's on there. So high level, just as a preview of why we advocated for 10 million for the Finance Committee as opposed to something smaller was because the capacity's there. There's been talk all year about, substantive projects. That you have existing debt that if we wake up 8 years from now and there's, for whatever reason, too much cash, you can pay down this debt, or in between that time frame, you can pay down the other debt with other cash. So that was sort of our conservative approach to it. High level, 10 million, 15 million, that's not really the question in terms of impact on credit.
Okay.
So, yeah. Did I answer?
Yeah.
All right.
And state law contains restrictions on how much you can borrow with general obligation debt. And
Yeah.
it's based on your basically your property tax assessment base, and you're well within that for your general obligation debt. I mean, plenty of room for that. So it's not an affordability test, but it's a threshold, and you meet it easily. So no issues there.
Are you able to provide us with some rough numbers on what that
Cost?
annual debt payment or
The-
debt
the
service
10
would be
million
based on 5 million and also 10 million?
Probably, if it was 10 million at 4%, it's around 716 is what we were forecasting, 716,000 per year. And so, go ahead, Amy. Stacy, I'm sorry.
No.
Getting late in the day.
They did present me, and I believe we shared with the Finance Committee, a sample debt schedule of what it would look like, and I can email that to the full council so that you have it after tonight's meeting.
Okay.
It's obviously not the final schedule because that won't be determined until we determine a bond amount and issue debt, but it was a sample of what the debt schedule could look like.
It was 716, and then you probably half that for 5, roughly, just for ballparking.
And just for clarification purposes, I know it was just discussed, but I know over the past 8 to 10 years, I can't remember this specific year, we went in, a previous council went in and refinanced a lot of the debt at a lower interest rate.
Yes.
So for clarification purposes, we cannot do that if we bond City Hall. We're not able to refinance if the rates drop suddenly.
I think after
Or
the
could
8
we?
years.
Yes,
Is
the bonds are refinanceable. It's just that the first 8 years have to be paid as agreed, which is typical. Even
First
the
8 years,
even the
okay.
previous deal that you had probably a 10-year call provision in it. We're putting in an 8-year call provision, shortening that to make it frankly easier to refinance if rates do drop. Yeah, this is the same municipal bond structure that we use for most cities and counties and utilities in Kentucky.
Stacy, is,
Yes.
and again, if you have this, sorry if I don't have, on the current debt that the city has, obviously, it appears that the business park will be,
By the end
will
of this
drop
year.
off in May,
Yeah.
around May 1st of next year. And then there's another one in 26. Do you know the rough numbers right now that we're paying on our annual debt service? Just roughly, if you don't have approximate numbers?
Let me think for a minute. I mean, the two bond issues, it's around 600,000, I think, for the two of them. And then these, I can kind of tell from each, it's probably 150, 160,000 on the aquatic center. So, which the aquatic center, obviously, it is a low amount. We could choose to pay that off at any point that council and the finance committee so wishes. We could bring that as a recommendation to pay that off in the next budget amendment if we wanted to. Those are just the variable rate KLC leases that we've had for a while. So those are not bonds. They can be paid off at any point. So the two small numbers.
And Stacy, the police department refinancing debt, both are callable.
Yes, they were
So-
issued in December of 2014.
we
So
can't
we
pay
have,
down on those.
we're about to meet that 10-year callable period, so we roll over to the new calendar year, and as we said, depending on what projects future councils may want to take on, if some years perform better than others, councils will be able to elect to, as part of the budget, we could pay larger amounts on those two issues that are shown that were issued in 2014.
Okay.
And I'll just make one last comment on something that Mark did. Of course, he's talked about the process and the steps, but as he said, was if we do both readings with the up to 10 million language, that once those offering statements are prepared, we can share those with City Council. And then I'll defer to the legal side of whether we have a work session or special meeting, but at some point, if you all just think about the timing of if you need to vote, if you want to vote on an amount, that would need to be at a special meeting because that would be taking action. So.
All right. No other questions?
Thanks, Stacy.
Madam Clerk?
Summary of ordinance and notice of adoption. City Council, City of Georgetown, Kentucky. City, their regular meeting held on November 11th, 2024, and the regular meeting held on November 3rd, 2024, adopted an ordinance titled
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we have the fire department, and Chief Thompson's gonna come up. He's gonna have to talk about the resolution for the training facility grant, which is the Kentucky Fire Commission, and I'm gonna let him kind of give a little background on that and kind of catch us up to date on that.
All right, Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. If you recall, last year, we were awarded $50,000 to the Kentucky Fire Commission for the training center. At that time, we were going to have to wait 2 years. Governor's administration believes in this strongly enough that they're starting to award these annually. So we put in again, and we were awarded $65,000 this time. So we're asking for permission for acceptance of that. I want to give a shout out to both Assistant Chief Johnsons. They worked really hard on this. We went down and spoke with the Fire Commission, explained what we did, the phase portion of it. We have recruits down there now that we're working toward getting the remaining portion of it, but between the rollover money that we were able to carry over from last budget and then this, we're going to be well on our way to more and above and beyond even what we wanted to do.
All right, and do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Motion made by Ms. Brent. Do I have a second?
Second, Mayor.
Second made by Ms. Tackett. Are there further questions and or comments?
I do have one. It's not a matching
No match, free money. That's good.
I love it.
The best.
And I
Great
want
job.
hats off to the Georgetown Fire Department on, if you not been down there to see that facility and what they did with that, and most of it was done by them, and it's really, if you think about that, used to be an old, whatever it used to be, recycling center to what it looks like now, I'm telling you what, it's night and day, and it really helps with, with recruitment of firefighters, and it gives a sense of ownership and belonging that, we have our own training facilities, and we're able to even let other people use it or market it. So my hat's off to you all, what you did there. I'm gonna tell you what, if this council haven't gone down to see that, you really need to go down and see that, because they really, really, you should show them before and after pictures.
Yeah, we're
so they
working
can
on,
see that.
we'll put together a presentation. We do have a recruit class going on currently. So if you drive by there, the gate's open, the guys are in there. Feel free to stop in anytime. We'll give you a little tour of it, while I'm mentioning that, graduation for the recruits is going to be on December 20th. I'll send something out for you all as well. We're actually going to host it at the training center this year. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, okay, so we had a motion and we had a second. Are there further questions and or comments? All right. All in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the training facility grant to Kentucky Fire Commission passed. Moving on, grants administrator, Ms. Karen Leverett's gonna come up, gonna talk about a resolution of the Emergency Solutions Fund, Kentucky Housing Corporation, and she's gonna tell you a little bit about that, and then also give you a little bit, I think we talked about this last time she brought it to us, okay?
Yeah, so I think most of these are in reference to my update from last meeting, the Emergency Solutions Fund grant that Candace got. It's for $99,068. There is a 50-50 match, so the city will be responsible for $99,068. And that's going towards the rapid rehousing low barrier shelter, correct? In partnership with the Gathering Place.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
Why is this not a match with the county? Why is the county not sharing this portion, the 99,000?
Oh, they are, okay.
Oh, they
Yes,
are?
they are, sorry,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
City, county will be responsible.
Yeah, so,
All right.
so that's half the 99,000 that we're talking about, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
so that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so,
Need a motion?
yes, I do.
Motion.
Motion made by Mr. Allen. Do I have a second? Second made by Ms. Hamburg. Are there further questions and no comment?
Just the way it reads. It just says, whereas the city's matching funds in the amount of $99,000 be out. Okay, I'll let it go. Never mind. If the county's in, good.
Well, we have an interlocal agreement with them.
Yeah, we have an interlocal agreement with them on that.
We can add language to clarify that sentence.
That would be helpful, I think.
It's a bit awkward.
Yeah.
You can still vote on it as is, because that's not changing anything, but on the final one, we'll clarify that the other three.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that may everybody won't get too excited and get their hair on fire, so we'll go with that.
Don't have less hair to.
If you get back to when it was first presented, there was a table attached, to the back that kind of outlined the expenses he was paying
Right.
for his part, so.
Yeah, we can add that language in after that. So we have a motion made and properly second, and we're, any other question and or comment or discussion? All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that this motion for the Emergency Solutions Fund for the Kentucky Housing Corporation passed. Item B, resolution for the TAP grant, Kentucky Transportation Cabinet.
Yes, this is the Transportation Alternatives Program to do the second phase of the sidewalks for Main Street, in the amount of $1,950,745. And then when you submitted the application, the required match is 20%, but to show how serious the city was willing to commit 30% match.
And that amount, is it 836,000?
I think so.
I think that's, is that the match from us? Okay.
Motion, Mayor.
Motion's made by Ms. Tackett. Have a second. Second made by Mr. Hampton. Are there further questions and or comments? Oh,
No, I'm sorry.
okay. All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. And the motion passed. This is something I think they've been trying for years to get. This is a good safety measure. And we have applied for this TAP grant, I think, gotten turned down a lot, so maybe our luck is changing a little bit, so we're able to do a little bit more for citizens, especially on that end for safety issues. Okay, all right. Item C, resolution of liability grant, Kentucky League of Cities.
Yes, this has been awarded for up to $3,000. We qualified for the whole $3,000. And Patrick was able to submit some receipts, I believe, from the police department to help us be eligible for that full $3,000. And in his email, he said he's never been awarded so quickly. So, good job.
Well done.
And I think what has happened there, he's found some cost-cutting measures that he presented to them, and they kind of gave us a refund check for that. That's what that is, okay? So, I need a motion.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Hambrick. Do I have a second? Second made by Ms. Tackett. Are there further questions and or comments? All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the liability grant for the Kentucky League of Cities pass. Thank you, Karen. Next, item 15 to the Police Department. And thank Stacy's back up again, along with Lieutenant Crump, who's back with us again.
I'm going to talk about the financial aspect of this purchase, and then obviously Lieutenant Crump presented the program to you all at the last meeting, so if you have any questions about the program itself, I'll obviously defer those to Lieutenant Crump. We had some information kind of come to us late in the day, Friday, after we sent the packet out, so I wanted to discuss what was in your packet versus another option council may want to consider. So what is in your packet is the full cost of the Drone as a First Responder program, which includes both the lemur and the responder drone and the related 5 years of service. It's a cost of about $300,000 over the course of 5 years. It was mentioned or requested that we might consider pursuing grant funding for this project. We have already received enough donations for the purchase of the lemur itself. Obviously, there are 5-year services that go along with that. So, however, for the full program, the full $300,000, obviously, there are some federal grants that we may be able to pursue. I think there's one that our grants administrator, Karen, has identified. But the application process is not until spring. Or at least after January 1. So if council is definitely set on pursuing some grant funding for part of this. We may want to amend this purchase request to only approve the lemur and the 5-year program that goes with it versus the whole program. Obviously, if we wait until after January 1, there will be price increases. And I spoke with the Brink representative myself, so there'll be price increases, and of course, it'll delay ordering. Those are just the two factors to consider. But if council is set on pursuing some grant funding for the responder drone and the services that go across with it, we have asked Brink to break down just the lemur if you want to take action on just that one tonight. So that's what I wanted to set up. I'll let Lieutenant Crump answer any lingering questions you may have about the program itself, but the municipal order in your packet is for the full program.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How much did we receive in donation? How much did I shouldn't say we, the police department, what dollar amount did you receive?
$14,100.
Wow. Mayor, I'm making a motion.
I'll second.
If that's what we're looking for,
Well,
ultimately, or we.
Well,
I
right
didn't mean to
now,
jump ahead. I'm
no, it's
sorry.
okay. I was gonna say, just be,
apologize.
if you're making the motion on what's in the packet, it's the full program with both drones, total cost of $300,000 over the course of 5 years. I'm not saying that, I'm just letting you know, that's what you're making.
I got ahead of myself,
So,
Mayor. I
so
apologize.
basically, you're saying,
I'm impressed.
if you,
uh,
if we approve the package right now, and if there was grant funding available down the road, we couldn't apply for that? Because we've
Most
already done
grants,
it?
especially federal grants, which is what we're looking at, are very strict about their purchasing.
Okay.
And both Karen and I feel that it would be in bad faith to sign an agreement, cancel the agreement, redo the agreement, even though our Brink reps said they would do that. We don't think that's in
But
good
we
faith
really
if you're
don't
applying
know
for
if we
grant
could get
funding. So
grant funding.
it either needs to be a motion to approve the full program, or to amend it to just do the lemur and the associated services, and I have those numbers if we.
Do we have any idea what the potential grant amount would be?
So if we did the grant, we would obviously, the way we have it broke down is we separated the lemur from the responder. The responder is roughly $27,000 by itself, and the lemur is roughly $14,000 by itself. Over the course of 5 years, if you combine both together, that's where you get to $303,000 and $60-some thousand a year.
And the lemur is about $94,000 over the course of 5 years by itself. So take that out, you've got about $200,000 left.
That's what would be
Well, the donations that you've received is actually paying for one of them.
for the first year
For the
of
first
the
year.
lemur.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right, okay.
All right, I'm gonna try to recover from that. I'm gonna try, it's gonna be hard.
Thank you.
If we apply for grant money, do we have an idea how long it would take to get a response back on whether or not?
Karen, you wanna come up? Can you answer that? Give an idea?
So the Homeland Security grants, they open in the spring, and then I think it is probably like a 6-month to 8-month waiting period for them to make an announcement.
Do you have any idea how much they are? I know we've gotten them before.
I mean, the ad has gotten them. I personally have not written one, but the application is very straightforward. Looking at past awards, what was the one that we looked at?
So we've applied for that same grant for the past 5 years for a Bearcat. We have not been awarded the Bearcat, and the reason I did not apply for a grant for the drone under that one this year is because we did apply for a Bearcat, and I did not want them to see that and pick because we really needed the Bearcat. We were trying to get grant funding for it, and I didn't want them to pick one or the other.
Right.
But we have not received it at all. Every time we've applied for it.
But you can. There were applications awarded for over $400,000. So, and there's no match requirement.
Okay, I think Chief Nash, you back there, you wanna say something?
Working with the Homeland Security grant, they will award that grant in October when the budget year for the federal government is awarded. So it will be next October when they award that money.
Okay.
The other thing that the Brink rep said we could do is, he did say that we could use the donations to purchase the lemur under the full contract and push receiving the responder back to the next fiscal year. So our 5 years would start for it, the next fiscal year where we could budget it in. And then our lemur obviously would start when we received it. So for example, we receive our lemur in, let's say, February, that's when our 5 years for it starts. If we didn't receive our responder till July, that's when our 5 years for that one will start.
I will say, from a legal standpoint, because we will have new counsel and that'll be in the fiscal year, just be mindful of your restrictions as far as appropriating money for future councils. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Oh, good point.
Well, and just that was what Karen and I were talking about with the grants, was obviously if we order both now, we're not, that could affect because federal grants are particular about the procurement, so.
All right.
That's what we were saying. Even though Brink has offered it, it's not something we're comfortable doing, so.
Obviously, I've never been in law enforcement. I know Mr. Stone has. No, I don't think you can put a price tag on providing safety, not only for members of your team, but also the community. I stand by what I said to begin with. I'm making a motion
For the whole thing?
for the whole thing.
I'm gonna second it. And then I wanna say too, is that these are under warranty, so if one gets shot down or ran over,
24
they'll,
You get a new one.
you get a new one.
Absolutely, that's already happened. Like I said,
That's what I thought.
we've had this company, the lemur that I passed around last council meeting, that is to the same company. We literally had that drone in our hands 12 hours, and we crashed it training with it in the Sallyport, and they overnighted us another drone.
That's good.
So
All right.
they'll take care. Now up to the camera, I want to make sure that's the camera. They only replace one time, but they'll replace the drone as many times as we need to replace it.
Okay. There you go.
In, like Mark said, you know, being law enforcement, there are so many applications that can go into play with. You know, just this past week, they had a guy up in north end of the county that was lost in the woods. Drone could have found him, you know. The murder suspect in Franklin County, drone could have helped look. Any fatality accidents, you take that camera up and you can do the 3D scan, which is huge because I've sat for hours on end and hand-drawn accident scenes. So the applications are endless. I think this would be a very valuable tool to take care of the men and women of the police department. Not only the police department, the fire department, public works too, all of the city could take advantage of these tools.
And the protection for citizens and police and fire departments and the de-escalation possibilities are key to me, and very needed.
Not only that, the transparency that we'll get to with it, that'll go on our, our website, our Facebook page, where you can look and see where the drone went. It's all documented.
Yeah.
So I have a motion by Mr. Showalter. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Todd did? Okay, my bad.
Todd did?
So Todd seconded, thank you. So we have had some
good.
discussion. Do we have any other discussion on this?
We are gonna be able to apply for grant money if this, definitely. No.
Not for this.
Not for this, no.
This will be it.
This will be, okay.
And you did say we're getting the lemur, Stacy, you said your option was, I'm sorry, the lemur first?
We can, yes, sir. So we can push back receiving the responder until the next budget cycle, so we can budget it in. We have the donations to pay for the Lemur S already, which is the first part of it. And once we receive that particular drone, that's when our 5 years for that drone starts. And we don't have to pay for it until we get it. And then if we push receiving the responder back, our 5 years won't start with it until we physically get it in our hands.
Is the responder the one that breaks the windows and all that?
That's the Lemur.
Oh.
The Lemur is, the Lemur's the indoor drone, the responder's the outdoor drone.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other questions and or comments? Okay, so the municipal order, all those in favor of the municipal order for the drone as first responder signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the drone as first responder Pass.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Item B, the municipal order for the Axon body worn camera add-ons.
Sir, so I brought Alan with me to answer any questions that I might not be able to answer, but we are asking for the council to approve an addendum to our current contract. So we have negotiated with Axon. We've identified we need more pro licenses to allow our sergeants to do what they need to do inside the program as far as report writing, specifically when it comes to use of force reports. Some have it, some do not. We weren't aware of that when we got all the pro licenses at the time when we signed the contract. In that negotiation, Axon decided they were going to give us 6 free. That's the number we need. They're just going to throw that in. Also, we've identified we need more third-party storage. So we have unlimited storage for the cameras themselves, so the videos that come off the camera go into their servers. That's in the contract. What we don't have is a way to take things that are external, put them into evidence.com, such as outside videos, pictures that are from other cases, or documents that come from other cases, to upload those in there. And more importantly, the celebrates that we do on search warrants, they take up, nowadays you have phones that are 1 terabyte. We only have 1,320 gigabytes for the entire department. So with the amount of celebrates we do through investigations, we're asking for unlimited storage. And then also community request. So the community request is a ability to give a link to a person that does not have a Axon license to share video or photos with us from their database. So if we go to Walmart for a shoplifter, we can give them a link or give them a QR code to scan. They upload that video to the Axon case officer, which would be the officer responding to it, and it goes right into their case without having to have thumb drives plugged in into our computers and then filtering it in that way. And that would kind of go hand in hand with the third-party storage.
I'll make a motion, Mayor.
Motion made by Mr. Stone,
I'm gonna second that motion.
second made by Ms. Tackett. Are there further questions and or comments?
Yeah, as I read through this, a lot of this was due to miscommunication on, I guess, Action's part and maybe the GPD. What's in place to prevent that from the future?
So we have been negotiating with Axon ever since we started the contract. This goes back 6 years, and from my experience, some of the miscommunication was the salespeople that I dealt with probably 4 sales representatives from Axon. Currently, we've had the same one since we've signed the contract, from my understanding. They did discount the entire cost at 30%. I think we have a pretty good understanding and a stronghold of what we need and what we want. Plus, having Alan in-house, he is in the system every day. He knows what the system needs. He's been a very good advocate for the police department to stay on top of Axon to make sure we're getting what we're asking for.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. If motion is made, properly second, no further comments. All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the municipal order for the Axon body worn camera add-ons was approved. Next, we have council comments, and I'm gonna start with Ms. Tackett.
Oh, I only have one, Mayor. It's a good meeting tonight, but I just wanted to put on the radar continually about our stormwater and what we've gotten any information from Strand, if there's anything that can be presented to us. I know that they were working on numbers.
I can do that.
Maybe at our next council meeting.
I will get some more information for you on that.
Thank you. And other than that, are we gonna vote on whether or not we're only gonna have one meeting in December, or are we gonna wait till December to do that?
Well, that's next time.
Next time?
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Be 11:25 meeting. All right, Mr. Allen.
I had a citizen reach out to me about a stoplight down by the new medical office building, the hospital on Bojangles. That stoplight, she said, is out of timing. She gets there about 5:30 in the morning, and it catches her and holds her, and she said there's no other vehicles out there. So Eddie is looking into this, and we'll see what feedback we get. We'll share that with the rest of the council, so hopefully the state can look at the timing of that, make some adjustments. And then the Indian Hill Stormwater Project map. So Eddie, I think, committed to give us something on that. And the business park, I'm not sure what fiscal court is doing, but I don't think we should be waiting on fiscal court to drive the bus. We need to, as Councilman Showalter talked about very eloquently last meeting, we really need a business park plan. We need businesses here. We need the revenue from those businesses, so it's probably gonna fall on the next council, and I'm sure it will, but let's, Mayor, make sure we don't lose that. And can we get feedback on what fiscal court is meeting on, so we understand what their outcomes were from the meetings, if they're talking about the business park. It would be good to know early on than later.
Okay. I will get that from him, once they find out about that. I'm sure they'll be open to what they're talking about tomorrow, next session, so I'm sure they're going to televise it.
Okay. I didn't know if that was a closed session. That's
No,
open session.
this is a special meeting. It's gonna be, I'm sure it'll be televised, yes.
Okay, I'll try to watch that.
And at 4 o'clock tomorrow.
4 o'clock. And the last thing I had was, we reviewed the work session ordinance tonight. I think the importance of that is just having that time on the calendar so that we know we have opportunities to set as a council. I say we, but next council has those opportunities to sit and talk through some of the issues, because there's a lot of tough decisions that have to be made, and it's very difficult to try to make those decisions in a setting like tonight. So having those work sessions designated and put on the calendar so that we can say, hey, we want to talk about these 2 or 3 items, I think will be helpful going forward.
And understand that there will be no action taken at those meetings, just talking about.
5 actions we can take, but one is not to take any votes, but there are 5 separate actions, so.
Okay.
That's all, Mayor, thank you. Oh, last thing, just wanted to shout out to all the veterans, and I know, appreciated your service, serving the country.
Thank you. Mr. Stone.
Thank you, sir. First off, we were supposed to be getting quarterly update reports from Republic. Can we get them scheduled in here?
Yeah,
and
we'll
give
get
us
those scheduled again, yes.
an update? And then the next thing I have is, I know we have Candace come in and do quarterly updates on what she's got going on. Is it possible, I know that Devin sometimes does it, but get Sarah James to come in to council and talk about what projects she's got, because, Devin saying it is kind of secondhand, but if we have her here once a quarter just to say, hey, this is what I've got going on, I think that would be a shot in the arm for a lot of the citizens to see what the city is going on. And then the last thing is, thank you, Mr. Showalter, for your service to this country, sir.
Amen.
All right, I'm gonna say you the last, Mr. Showalter, just out of respect, okay? All right, Ms. Brent.
I have nothing tonight, sir.
All right, Ms. Hambrick.
Really great meeting, a lot of complex issues, especially with the water stuff. To think that our water company could do what they did and to have the success that we've had, thank you very much. I've had some people contact me about the property next to Garth.
Okay.
They are gone, I've seen, but that property does not look like it did, and there's gravel everywhere, and it would be really nice if they put topsoil back. I know we don't want to do anything with it right now because we have a lot of wastewater decisions to make, but it would be really nice to have grass, and it doesn't look like it did before they came.
Emily, go ahead. You want to say something?
So under their contract that they have with us, for that, they have until Friday to restore it to what it looked like before.
Okay.
Eddie is in conversations with them.
Perfect.
And
Okay.
then we'll see what happens.
Okay.
All right.
See that? See that?
Thank you.
Got your quick solo. See that? We've been on this so long. There you go.
That's it, Mayor.
All right, next, Mr. Hampton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just one thing is on the City Hall, I know you sent out some pictures probably about a month ago. Could we get just an update maybe next time?
Sure.
As to the progress that they're making? And more specifically, I'd like to know the status of the contingency that we have. You know, are we eating into that? What's going on with that? So.
Sure will.
And last thing is Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans and those who served.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, last but not least, our veteran.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Showalter, you're up.
Back in January of last year, before we had our first meeting, I set out a list. I sat down and created a list of things I wanted to try to see us get done in 2023 and 2024. And as my time is coming to a halt, there's still a couple of things left I'd like to see us do. We've talked about this for how many years? Many years, about the restroom facilities at Marshall Field by the football field.
And we're working on that.
Okay, can we get an update before December 31st at
Yes.
11:59? Before 11:59 p.m. on December 31st?
Before you check out, right? Okay,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
I'm hoping that that remains a priority. That's my hope. Not just for me, but for anybody that either plays football or flag football or tackle football or a relative that's watching, that those restrooms are greatly needed.
Yep. Yes.
I hope that remains a priority.
Okay.
That's all I have.
And we'll get you information on that. All right, is there any other business to be brought before this council? If not, this meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you.